8 years in the making, 7 years since the reveal, 2 years since the first big gameplay demo, and now we're finally here. Cyberpunk 2077 has released, and oh dear god, this launch has been a rough one. But I'm not here to sit and talk about the fact that the game has some bugs, because I'm sure you've all heard about that. I'll briefly touch on it later because it's important to note, but for the vast majority of this video, I'm going to be talking strictly about the game itself. Since this is an analysis video and not one of my normal reviews, it will be a lot more in-depth, and there will be 2 sections that are heavier on spoilers, but I will warn you before I show or say anything. Now, myself, like many others, had been looking forward to this game for quite some time. The hype was so massive though that it could never live up to it, but I was pretty confident that it'd still be a really good game. My prediction was that the game would be great from a visual, story, and RPG aspect, but would likely suffer in the gameplay department. And while I do have some issues with the gameplay, surprisingly, it's not my biggest concern. For me, it was the fact that this game feels like a facade for something it's not. It isn't much of an RPG, the world feels hollow, the AI is less advanced than some PS2 era games, and the story feels like it doesn't know what it wants to be about. That last part is actually something that I would kind of use to describe a lot of the game as a whole, as it tends to get caught in between ideas that it doesn't fully flesh out. Now, I definitely had some fun with the game, and I think it does have a lot of merit in certain aspects, but I can't help but feel a bit let down by the full release, even without the hype. But with all that being said, let's not waste any more time, and just get right into things. From a gameplay perspective, Cyberpunk 2077 is a pretty straightforward action-adventure game, with different options for combat and stealth. What helps differentiate it from similar games, though, is its wide range of weapons, perks, upgrades, and abilities. The gunplay itself is pretty tight, and I particularly like the different classes of weapons you can find. Things such as the power weapons that can ricochet bullets, tech weapons that can shoot through walls, and smart weapons that can auto-lock and allow you to launch a barrage of bullets from behind cover. There's also some unique reload animations that you can find on iconic weapons, which were really cool. And overall, I'd say the core gunplay is a pretty fun experience, though there is one major issue with the AI that I'll get to in a bit. When it comes to the melee combat in Cyberpunk, however, well, it's kinda ass, and it feels as flimsy and imprecise as it looks. Thankfully, I could just kinda ignore it, so it didn't bother me too much. What does bother me, however, is the looting and crafting. Now, this game is basically a damn looter shooter with how much stuff there is to pick up. I mean, every enemy you fight drops gear, and every location you enter will have boxes and tables full of stuff. The first issue I have with this is that half of it's just completely useless. The junk is, well, junk, and can only be sold for a small amount of eddies. Consumables give you very minor stamina or health buffs, and I never once found a need to use them because I was constantly loaded on health. And my other issue with this is that it means you're going to be seeing a lot of the same weapons recycled over and over again with only slightly different damage values. This can feel a bit overwhelming and irritating as you're constantly just looking around to pick up a new gun that looks and functions identically to your last, except this one does 3 more damage, so that means it's better. It makes most of the guns feel disposable, and in my opinion, this weakens the crafting aspect as well. I never really felt compelled to try to craft any new weapon or even bother spending time upgrading shit because I knew I was likely to just find a better gun during the next encounter. It also doesn't help that the combat itself is pretty simple once you discover that the only thing you really need is to just stash points in the cool attribute so you can load up on critical damage and then go from fighting bullet sponges to this. And speaking of that cool attribute, this is a great way to segue into a discussion about the perks, and there is a lot. And it can honestly be a bit overwhelming at first trying to read through all these and figure out which slot you want to spend your limited points on. There's also a different menu for cyberware upgrades, and while these seem pretty cool initially, they're expensive as hell and essentially just act as a different menu for more stat upgrades. The cool arm and leg augmentations were the only worthwhile stuff in my opinion, but even still, my critical damage sniper build was just way more effective than using any of these. I guess it's good that there's options, which makes different builds sort of viable, but I kind of think half of them are worthless because there's such minor upgrades and critical damage far outweighed everything else in my experience. I also wasn't a huge fan of the hacking in the game, though admittedly that's kind of because I think stealth as a whole is just pointless. Now, I should make it clear that I'm a big fan of stealth games, and I always go into things with a stealth-first approach. but sadly, every time I tried to do stealth in Cyberpunk, I ran into 3 major issues, which kinda made me give up on it. The first is the fact that there's never really any penalty for going guns blazing, and doing so can often be significantly less time-consuming than trying to hack your way through a base one by one. The second reason is the AI, which again, I'll get to in a bit. And the third is the fact that on PC, some goddamn son of a bitch monkey brain programmed the dash button to be double tapping the WASD keys with no option to rebind it. This means that every time I tried to make a small adjustment, I ended up flying forward, which made me break stealth on multiple occasions, and it even sent me flying off more than a few roofs. Just make it alt or remove it from the game. I have no idea how this made it past testing. In that case, I will admit that from my standpoint, it's kinda hard for me to fully assess the stealth and hacking since my view is a bit tainted, but then again, I haven't gotten to talking about the AI, which deserves its own title card. By far, one of the worst aspects of this game is the AI, or lack thereof. I'm not joking when I say that this game's AI is some of the worst I have seen in a AAA video game. Grand Theft Auto Vice City is probably a pretty apt comparison for the AI, and that game came out 18 years ago. I mean, if you even shoot your gun once in this damn game, every NPC in the area becomes forever locked in this crouch state and will only get out of it once they despawn from the world. The combat AI is thankfully mostly functional, but it's still very weak and enemies do little more than just stand behind cover or, just stop reacting entirely. There were multiple times where I cleared an area, only to find that I was somehow still in combat mode because some dickwad was sitting in a corner. The stealth AI, on the other hand, is extremely intelligent in the fact that if you get spotted once, every single enemy within a mile radius now has an exact pinpoint on your location. Not to mention that sometimes enemies like to magically spot you through walls.
Bruh! That is the second time! How? That is covered! Okay, I'm just shooting them.
Walking around the world is easily where the AI is at its worst though, as you will notice that there is absolutely nothing you can do to interact with 99% of NPCs in the game. None of them fight back if you attack, none of them approach you to talk or give quests, and your conversations with them are entirely comprised of being called handsome or being told to fuck off.
Piss off, slacker! Another fucking weasel.
None of them even do anything but complete their semi-broken idle animations before they despawn from the world. So much for AI that are all
living their lives within a full day and night cycle.
The police system in the game revolves around cops just spawning in behind you the split second you commit a crime, even if you're on a rooftop. And you can also break this system pretty easily by simply standing in a corner, because the game will just wait for you to look away so it can spawn them behind you. And despite cops always standing next to their car, they will never get in and chase you. That last part is due to the fact that there is no actual driving AI, just simple pathing, and as a result, slightly blocking a road is enough to completely stop every car in the area from moving because they aren't programmed to handle that. Overall, the AI is pretty fucking embarrassing, and I'm not sure how so many reviewers looked past it. Just on this aspect alone, this game could not possibly be a 10. Cyberpunk 2077 is a game centered around V, a character trying to become a legend in Night City. When an unfortunate incident forces V to place a secret data shard in their head, they're given the gift of bringing famous rocker/terrorist Johnny Silverhand back from the grave in the form of a digital construct that V can interact with. Now, the main story itself has a few interesting ideas and some really fun missions, but by the end, I just didn't feel like the story went anywhere, and I'm not even sure what they were trying to do. I didn't feel like my character changed at all. I know for a fact Johnny didn't change, which I'll discuss later, and I'm not even sure what story they were trying to tell. To me, it felt like it wavers a bit in this awkward middle ground where it doesn't want to fully explore any particular theme or idea, and despite me getting what I thought was the only good ending, it still felt like the game just fizzled out. It was almost like I was playing the first half of a middle movie in a trilogy, always referencing past events that I haven't experienced, while also talking about a future that has yet to happen. The game's life path intro is so bland and stilted, and it skips over so much potential backstory and setup to throw you into the action, so I always felt like I was just missing something. But then as soon as the game started to ramp up, it just stopped, and it was over. The whole time I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it never did. It felt incomplete and unfocused, and due to the delays and poor state of the launch, I think there's a decent chance that it was incomplete and not what they originally wanted. Now, I know this sounds a bit vague, but I have to keep it that way for now to avoid major spoilers. If you're already prepping the dislike button and leaving a comment telling me that I just don't understand real storytelling, I would ask you to stick with me for a bit, as I'm going to explain my views on other aspects of the story and game as a whole, and then I'll dive into a straight up spoiler discussion. But for now, let's keep going. Alright, so I want to talk a bit about the characters in this game, starting with your main companion, Johnny Silverhand, played by none other than Keanu Reeves. Now, this is going to be controversial, but I don't like Keanu Reeves' performance at all here, and I don't think he was the right fit for the character. Keanu Reeves as an actor has a very limited range, and he's pretty much just played himself throughout his whole career, so when he's tasked with playing a self-centered, loud-mouthed ex-rocker terrorist who is waging a self-proclaimed war against the forces of entropy, I just don't buy it. And to me, it sounds like Keanu reading lines off of a script. Maybe it's just me, but most of the time he said something, I thought it felt way too monotone, unenthusiastic, and flat.
Okay, I'm fine. It's okay, it's okay, I'm fine, yeah. Just Delta the fuck out.
What about the dead
That
name?
was fucking terrible.
Yes.
There's a fine line between sounding apathetic and sounding boring, and this tips the scale of boredom more often than not. It doesn't help that he's also given some incredibly cringe lines of dialogue to say, like when he randomly decides to tell you about how impressive his cock is.
Know what? You're starting to remind me of me, 50 years back. Minus the charisma. An impressive cock.
Oh my god. Why? Why did they add that? That is so cringe.
When I found out that Johnny was going to be a prominent character, I was really interested to see how he would affect the plot and what his input would be. And as it turns out, his input is just complaining about everything. No matter who you help, no matter what you do, dude is always just whining. He talks constantly, but he never said anything profound or interesting. It was just chatter for the sake of chatter. And by the end, I didn't understand his purpose. His goals as a character are nebulous to say the least, and he's so inconsistent with what he wants that I'm not quite sure what the devs were trying to do. For me, he was mostly just a minor annoyance, but it started to become so grating to hear him speak, and it all culminated with this interaction right here.
Nope, no way. Bad idea. Tell her to find some other yes man.
What do you say? You in?
Why would you say that?
I don't know. Don't like the idea, that's all.
Shut the fuck up,
It's
Johnny.
just...
Like, what's even the point of having him talk there? What does that add? That feels like every conversation with Johnny. What is that adding? What are you saying, Johnny? What is the point of that? It's nonsense for the sake of nonsense. Now, I liked the initial idea of Johnny, but because of the way he's written and voiced, I just think he's a really shit character. Though, considering that there is a meter for your relationship with Johnny, I guess you can say that this is an acceptable reaction for a player to have. I'll explain my stance on him a bit more in my spoiler section, but if anyone watching is a fan of Johnny, can you tell me why? I don't think he's charismatic, he's certainly not insightful, his goals are inconsistent, and hell, he's not even funny. He's kind of just a monotone douchebag.
That all you have to say?
And she's nice. 6 out of 10.
Do people really like Keanu that much that they're simply giddy at the sight of him? But enough about Johnny. Let's talk about some other characters. Cyberpunk 2077 is a massive world brought to life by a large cast of side characters, and while I don't think they're particularly amazing, they're generally pretty solid. People like Jackie, Panam, Delamain, and Takamura offer some good banter during missions and are worthwhile side characters to help out and get to know. My personal favorites, however, were definitely Misty and Judy. Misty is involved in one of my favorite side quests, Heroes, and is one of the few characters who I felt actually had meaningful insight on certain situations. And then Judy was just far and away the most interesting character in the whole game, and she easily had the best questline as it features some of the only real character development in the entire game. Playing through her questline, you can definitely see some actual growth, and it features some of the best bits of storytelling overall. By the end, I could safely say, hey, this went somewhere, you changed, and things feel different now, which is something I unfortunately can't really say for much of the main story. When I said earlier that I don't know what the story is, part of this comes from the lack of prominent themes. This game is cyberpunk, but pretty much only in name and aesthetic, as many traditional cyberpunk themes and ideas seem to be nothing more than basic fluff and background filler. The main plot itself could happen in pretty much any other setting, and quite frankly, it has happened in other settings. Themes of transhumanism, fading humanity, what it means to have a soul, and dilemmas of advanced AI are mentioned very briefly but are never expanded upon and are pretty much only reserved for side quests and background details. For example, there are tons of references about cyberpsychosis and how dangerous your implants can be, but almost every mission I had regarding that was just a weak-ass boss fight with a cyberpsycho. I would have loved to see some missions or story beats dealing with people losing their humanity or losing control of themselves due to their implants, but that's completely absent from the main story and only happened in one really stilted quest that does nothing more than have the character say, "Uh-oh, I made an oopsie, oh well, the end." The same thing goes for the idea about AI. There's one quest that I played that deals with rogue sentient AI, and while it was one of the better missions in the game, like most side quests, it was a bit one-note and inconsequential. And there is nothing in the main story that touches on AI past just simply acknowledging its existence. There's a section where they discuss people's consciousness that lies beyond the black wall of cyberspace. And this idea is cool, but it's not expanded upon past them saying, yeah, it's there. There's no dilemmas of siding with AI over humans, no issues about AI fighting back or trying to lead an uprising, not even the basic "are synths worthy of salvation" theme that Blade Runner and even Fallout 4 have. Hell, the city is very clearly divided into several districts that would have been a great fit for issues about class and wealth disparity, but these themes are again used for background filler, and the districts don't function any differently from each other except for just having different architecture to look at. It would have been cool to have some missions that could make you choose sides between doing jobs for the rich or going against them and helping the poor instead. Maybe things you do have an effect on how the districts change or evolve. Maybe even just have cops patrol certain districts more than others. Or, well, I guess it would have been nice to just have cops that could actually patrol at all, but you get the point. I know this may not matter as much to some, but to me it's very disappointing to see that the devs didn't really want to tell a cyberpunk story, they just wanted the pretty aesthetic. Either that or they simply have no idea what being cyberpunk actually means. I think part of my issue with this is really just the lack of impactful choices or tough decisions. Never once did I really have to stop and think about what I wanted to do, and the game was completely lacking moral dilemmas that are a perfect fit for a cyberpunk game. This leads me to my next section of the video, and one of my biggest problems with the game overall, the fact that Cyberpunk 2077 isn't really an RPG. I'm not going to beat around the bush with this one, I'm going to put it bluntly. This game has a complete illusion of choice, and the vast majority of your actions and decisions don't matter. See, the game starts off by having you pick a life path, which is going to serve as your backstory. Your options are either the Nomad, the Street Kid, or the Corpo, all of which have significantly different styles and approaches to your character and how they interact with the world. Or at least that's what it seemed like until you realize that the life paths have no impact on how any of the story plays out and are all just really short, really stilted 20-minute intro sections that all end with the player watching the exact same cutscene no matter what you picked. Whether you were a Street Kid, Corpo, or Nomad, you end up becoming a Street Kid in this 6-month time-lapse cutscene, and your selection doesn't even have much of an effect later on either. The different life paths give you an additional side mission or two and occasional extra options for dialogue that are relatively rare and, as a Nomad at least, didn't have any options that drastically changed my conversations. But this is only the tip of the iceberg, and things started to get worse pretty quickly after when I realized that the only major choice you make in the prologue doesn't mean shit either. I won't spoil specifics, but there's an option to side with one person or another, but regardless of who you choose, the same person ends up dying in a cutscene, your choice doesn't have any effect on how things play out, and I don't think there's even any other mention of your decision throughout the rest of the game. At that point, why even bother asking me to pick a side? But it gets even worse than that, because after the prologue, there are only three other things that affect how the main story plays out. 2 of them are simply whether or not you completed a character's questline, and if you did, you get an additional option when picking your ending, and the other is your relationship with Johnny, but again, this still just gives you another ending to pick. Emphasis on the word pick, because you don't get an ending, you pick an ending. Nothing you do in the game really adds up, and your first truly meaningful choice comes at the end of the game when you pick which ending path to take. Everything else, every other choice you make, every other character you deal with, everything you do in the world doesn't affect the main story in the slightest, except for mildly changing some background details. This issue is blatantly obvious with the dialogue as well, and I would liken this system to that of Fallout 4's, as most of your dialogue choices often come down to yes, yes but in blue, or yes but a bit more mean. There were several times where I wasn't even sure why they bothered adding choices, because the conversation leads to the same place regardless of which option you choose. And you can't even really get bad outcomes for any of the missions either, as you either fail completely or you select a different version of yes and continue forward with the same story. I mean, even if you tell Johnny to fuck off every chance you get, he still just keeps asking you to do his mission, so it's not like you can even say no, you're just picking option 3 of saying yes but being mean about it. There's not a whole lot of player agency either, and in the very few times where it feels like the game allows you to play your own way and make a choice other than what's on screen, it can often still just wrap back around into being another version of yes. Take this side quest for example, the Hippocratic Oath. Now, I guess I should give a spoiler warning since I'm going to spoil this small side quest, but it's one of the hundreds of side quests in the game, so very minor spoiler warning, but I think it is important to hear to better understand this lack of meaningful choices. Anyway, in this quest, like most others, you're tasked with going to a place to kill some enemies and free a hostage. In this case, the hostage is actually a Ripperdoc, and when you get there, she is mid-operation on a dying gang member. You tell her it's time to go, but as a doctor, she says she feels obligated to save the man's life. You're then given the choice to help her or refuse. Or you can do what I did and just shoot the guy in the face and end it right there. It wasn't an option listed, but the game allowed me to do it, and for one of the first times during my whole playthrough, I felt like I, the player, was able to make a real choice that changed the outcome of something, and it felt so cool. Until the doctor proceeded to just get in the car and leave, and Regina called and said everything was good and sent the money over. This made me a bit worried, so then I loaded up an old save and redid the whole mission but chose to help the victim, and just as I feared, literally the exact same thing happens. No matter if you help them or not, you complete the mission, get the same amount of money, and the character is never seen again. I mean, I thought, hey, she's a Ripperdoc, wouldn't it be cool to be able to find her later on working somewhere? Maybe she has a special item or gives you a discount if you help save the man. But nope, the mission ends the same way regardless of what you did, and she's never seen again. Part of my issue with this lack of choice is that the game just starts to feel very thin once you realize most things you do lead to the same outcome. For me, it was kinda immersion breaking to see how shallow it was. Characters would ask me things and I just couldn't help but think, does it even matter what I do here? And most of the time, it didn't, which is a pretty damning thing for an RPG. One of the key components of Cyberpunk's world are the different gangs spread throughout the city, such as the Voodoo Boys, the Animals, the Valentinos, the Tiger Claws, and several others. And I was really hoping that there would be some consequences or effects for how you choose to interact with the different gangs, but there simply are none. Aside from a very select few scripted missions like the one I just talked about, there isn't even any interaction with the gangs aside from simply killing them. But the game very clearly wants you to feel like there's more, because it'll directly lie to you to make it seem like you had a real choice. Here's a completely spoiler-free example. I went into a mission, shot the whole place to shit, I killed someone I could have just talked to, I came out, and Johnny told me this.
One thing's for sure, though. Claws won't forget this.
The game literally says that the Tiger Claws won't forget this, which to me implied that I just made a choice that could alter my experience, and I was eagerly anticipating the results. Except there were no results. No consequences. Nothing. The Tiger Claws don't act any different. Wakako doesn't act any different. They don't remember what you did. They don't hunt you down. You don't lose any standing in the district. You don't lose access to quests. It doesn't change the main quest at all. Hell, it doesn't even change the quest chain that it's a part of. For me, this was extremely disappointing, especially since it really shows how all the gangs of Night City were nothing more than standard enemies with different clothes on. I would have loved to see some faction system or some form of deeper interaction with them, but instead they're just cannon fodder. Like I said in my discussion about the themes, the different districts and gangs could have been a really cool way to create some interesting conflict or dilemmas, but all of that gets completely thrown aside. They're so disposable and interchangeable that oftentimes I didn't even realize what gang I was fighting. Now, when it comes to the missions themselves, this game is a bit of a mixed bag. The main missions are usually pretty fun from a gameplay perspective, but the side missions vary from really good to really trash. The more narrative-heavy ones were usually pretty solid, as they offered some of the few good bits of story in the whole game, and the mission's Heroes and Pyramid Song were probably my favorite, even though, like most others, they unfortunately don't really deal with any cyberpunk themes or have any real decision-making. However, when it comes to the countless odd jobs and encounters, the bar for quality drops much lower. See, each district has a fixer, which is basically a middleman between you and the client, and they call you whenever they have a gig. And boy, do they have an endless supply of gigs. These fuckers call you so frequently that they seriously give Preston Garvey a run for his money in the irritation department.
Her brother would be grateful. Deets attached.
Huh?
Hey, there's a mox. Something isn't
Just
right with
called
her.
me 2
Could be
seconds ago.
And the gigs they offer are almost always the same shit over and over. You go to a place and kill enemies. Sometimes they spice it up by having you pick up an item or free a prisoner, but that's about it. And the locations you go to aren't all that interesting either, at least not the ones that I did. Most of them were just shootouts in a parking garage, a warehouse, an apartment, or a back alley. And like I said in my story section, none of them ever have any interesting themes or story beats. And as far as I know, all of them follow the yes, yes, and yes cycle when it comes to choices. Now, I want to make it clear that I don't think the gigs are like straight up terrible or anything. The problem is that I just didn't think any of them were really good either. They're just kind of dull, fine, okay? I don't know, like the gameplay and the stories within them are usually just repetitive and bland, and it just doesn't make for an interesting or exciting mission, especially since your choices within them don't matter. And when you have a large collection of things that are not good, I think it decreases the overall value, because why would I keep doing them if none of them feel worthwhile? In the end though, since there are so many different quests in the game, I'm sure your mileage will vary depending on what you do. And I mean, maybe I just had really unfortunate luck of picking the not so good ones, but I can only speak from experience, and in my experience, the side quests were pretty bland, with a few highlights here and there. Alright, we're finally at the point where I just lay it all out and discuss some major spoilers. Skip to the time on your screen if you want to avoid this section, but I'm just going to get into it in 3, 2, 1. Okay, for anyone watching this, can you please tell me what the story of this game is? Because after finishing it, replaying some parts, watching all the endings, and checking out some videos, I still don't know what the hell they were trying to do here. Upon first glance, I thought the game was going to be about becoming a legend and bringing yourself up from nothing, but that idea seems to fade out, especially because like the third mission you do is robbing the most powerful man in the world, meaning the game has already gone from 0 to 100, so it's not like you can really go higher than that. Every fixer also already knows your name, and this legend status was never the focal point past the 6-hour mark, so this clearly isn't the intent of the story. And once you get Johnny in your head, your focus clearly changes to, like, surviving and trying to get Johnny out of there. But then what's the story from there? What's it about? What are the themes? What does it mean? What does it say? What are the arcs and character developments? V doesn't have much room to change throughout the story, especially since your choices don't really matter, so it's not like you, the player, have a huge impact on things. So in that case, I think it basically comes down to your relationship with Johnny, which for me was obviously a bit of a hostile one. At that point, I thought, okay, maybe it's trying to be about this struggle with Johnny, and maybe it's trying to harp on the idea of losing your identity. But the game is so tepid when it comes to exploring those themes that I can't figure out what it could be trying to do. I had a hard time relating to V as is due to the lack of RPG elements, so if they wanted to hit on the idea of losing oneself, it's already kinda off to a bad start. Johnny's also really weird in that he's not fucking consistent at all. Dude yells and complains about a bunch of nonsense, but it never seemed like he had any drive or desire to do shit. He kinda just goes with whatever you do. Whether you're a total dick to him or you're his best friend, he still will just politely give you your body back if that's the option you choose, which kinda doesn't make sense for his character. I think this devil on your shoulder idea might have worked much better if he was actually an antagonist and actively tried to screw you over, or, you know, he actually had some drive to do anything. But as it stands, he kind of just goes with the flow. So then I started to think, okay, maybe the game just like really wants you to be friends with Johnny, or maybe it's trying to be about his development. I've seen some people talk online about how the game could be about legacy, and how if you do Rogue's questline, Johnny starts to see how his ideals of the past and his desire to be a legend don't mean shit if no one cares about you. Now, I don't think this was the main intent of the story, because why would they relegate this to an entirely optional side quest? But even if it was supposed to be about Johnny's change, Johnny can't help but contradict that shit. Because if you have enough affinity with him, he just wants to go back to Arasaka and lead one final attack, which just shows he hasn't really changed at all. With how surface level or non-existent the character development is, I'm just left wondering what was the point? What did we actually accomplish by the end of the game? The answer is not much. So then I thought maybe the story's hidden within the themes, but they're also bare bones that I'm having trouble trying to pull something out. The game touches on the ideas of immortality and rogue AI, and some of your options for the endings revolve around sending your consciousness into cyberspace. But given everything the game has told you about cyberspace, this ending is really stupid. I mean, Johnny literally describes how much of a hellhole being stuck in cyberspace is, so that makes no sense as a true ending. After that, I thought, okay, maybe it's about the inevitability of death, since you essentially die in most of the endings, and maybe they're trying to harp on the idea of living life to the fullest. But if that's the case, I think they do a really poor job. Red Dead 2 has a similar plot line of racing towards death, but that game works extremely well due to Arthur's fantastic redemption arc. The movie Arrival also works with inevitability, and the film's unorthodox structure leads to a fantastic twist that gives weight to all the past, present, and future events. Cyberpunk, in contrast, has no interesting character arc like Red Dead, and no unique structure or twists like Arrival, so if inevitability was the idea they were going for, they did a piss poor job. So what else is there? I've seen a few people try to say that it's about what you leave behind and the people whose lives you affected, but just like the idea of inevitability, I think this is weak as hell too. Helping all the side characters in Red Dead makes that narrative more fulfilling because the whole point is about doing what's right and redeeming yourself. Helping the few side characters that matter in Cyberpunk doesn't really do shit but offer one of 4 romance options, which don't matter at all if your partner's name isn't Pan Am Palmer, because she's the only one who actually has her own ending. Like I said, if you're someone who's beaten the game, can you tell me what the story actually is, or at least what you think CD Projekt Red was trying to do, because I'm left dumbfounded. To me, it seems like they got caught up in a few different ideas, and then when they got Keanu on board, they maybe tried to shift to a story that included him more, but it kind of just resulted in one of the most haphazardly constructed stories I've played in a while, and I just don't think the game says, does, or means anything. You start, you shoot some people, and then it ends. I felt the same starting it as I did ending it, like there was supposed to be more when there simply wasn't. Now, before I get someone telling me that it's not supposed to have life lessons, it's supposed to simply be fun and entertaining. Look, I'm not asking for the game to have a moral of the story here. I'm just asking for it to be about something, or have some substance or themes. If shooting bad guys while walking between neon-colored locations is enough of a story for you, then more power to you, my friend. But for me, it's not. And again, I don't really appreciate how they use Cyberpunk for just the aesthetic and not the story. To be fair though, I guess on the bright side of things, at least they did nail the aesthetic. Hands down, the best aspect of this game is the level design of the city itself. Everything is so densely packed with winding streets, towering skyscrapers, bustling market centers, makeshift shelters, and decaying communities that you'd expect to find in a futuristic dystopia. From a level design aspect, this could possibly be the most well-designed city in any video game, as it all felt very natural, no matter where you are in the game world. And honestly, some of my favorite moments in the whole game came from just blasting Run the Jewels on the radio and driving around the city taking in the view.
I swallow all my drugs so the penis unplugged. When the laws of entropy touch, you better dread the judge. Wiser men than us been crushed to find dust. When the fortune cookie dummy unfucked, I just shrug.
My personal favorite location in the world is probably Rancho Coronado at the bottom of Santo Domingo. I love the visions of these decaying suburbs on the outskirts of town, and they kind of gave me this feeling of almost a failed expansion from Night City. The world is also helped by the great use of color and lighting that you would come to expect from the cyberpunk aesthetic. I found the daytime lighting in particular to be really good, but I also like the neon fog that covers the city throughout the night. All that being said, however, there is one glaring issue here, and it's that the world itself kind of feels like a facade, and no amount of pretty visuals or architecture can make up for the fact that from a gameplay standpoint, this is one of the most hollow and artificial game worlds in recent memory. Now, you've all heard the saying about the ocean in the puddle, and that's this game to a T. Night City is very big, and there's a lot to see, but frankly not much to do. The vast majority of the buildings you come across are blocked off, shops are few and far between, and most of them just sell worthless consumables or junk. And the shops that do sell more meaningful items like clothes or guns also fall short due to the fact that, as far as I know, all of their inventories are randomized and you're better off just picking up new items from the people you kill. Like I said earlier in the video, NPCs are lifeless and have no interaction with you or the world. Every quest was clearly marked on the map, and I never felt like I actually discovered anything for myself. The world itself is just so goddamn big, and it's blatantly obvious that they're struggling to fill the space with interesting stuff. There were tons of times where I stumbled upon a cool looking area only to find that my interaction with it was to just stand there and look. There's not even any minigames or other such activities that don't involve killing gang members. I mean, seriously, for anyone who has played this game, I challenge you to go into the middle of Night City, pick a direction, and just walk for 5 minutes. And tell me how many locations you find that you can actually enter, how many NPCs you can interact with that aren't randomly generated crowds, and how many missions you can find that aren't just shooting gang members. And please, tell me if you found any random encounter that wasn't just a gang shootout. Now, I'm not saying this game needs to fill every building with stuff, but what I am saying is that this game world is just too damn big and too damn empty and probably should have been half the size that it currently is, because past shooting gang members, there's nothing to do. And adding like mini games or just other side activities isn't even fully about the activities themselves, it's also about just making the world feel believable. If there are things the player can do in the world, that means the characters in the world can do them as well. And it just makes things that much more believable. It feels like it actually functions as a society, as a world, as a universe, and not just as a facade that's built specifically for a player to walk through and look at. Because the irony is not lost on me that the 24/7 store is closed 24/7. The game is also severely lacking in a general quality of life aspect as well. In my opinion, the biggest offender here is the fact that you can't customize shit in this game. See all those awesome looking cars? Well, you can only buy a predefined set of them, and if you don't like the color they give you, too bad, because you can't change it. Unless, of course, you find a random one that has a color you like and you can steal it, but oh wait, there's no garage system, so you can't keep it. Seriously, how the fuck do they not have the ability to change the color of your car? That would probably take like a day or two to implement. Just cut out some of the garbage side missions and work on this instead. Some other issues that I found were the fact that you can't craft multiple items at once, the fact that characters walk slow as shit during the trailing missions, the fact that you can't preview clothes before buying them, the fact that there's no transmog feature so your character will kinda always look like a jackass if you want good armor stats, the fact that the minimap is so tiny that you're guaranteed to blow past every turn because you can't see it coming until it's already passed. The physics system is absolute trash and getting out of your car at high speeds looks like this. There's also no ability to pop car tires, no ability to push people off ledges, and no splash effects when you shoot into the water, and oftentimes you'll get stuck trying to get out of the water. And the fact that the devs thought it was acceptable to hear your character scream, "Ah, shit," 800 times. This one is pretty egregious in my opinion, and I hated hearing it. It doesn't sound like he's hurt. It sounds like he's getting railed in the ass.
Ah, shit!
Like seriously, does he have to? Shit. Come on, you couldn't have done better than that.
And yet the devs thought it was okay to have him actually repeat the same thing like 20 times. Now obviously, this stuff isn't a major part of the game, but the lack of polish and overall quality do not make it feel like the next generation of open world games that it was being touted as, and it kinda hurts the overall experience. What doesn't hurt the experience, however, is the great soundtrack. In typical sci-fi fashion, the soundtrack of Cyberpunk is made up of lots of synthetic, electronic, and mechanical sounds, and I think we get some really good stuff across the board here. The driving, pulsating synths do a great job keeping the action flowing during combat, the licensed music on the radio contains some bangers and made driving through the city even more enjoyable. And this weird cello synth mix was easily my favorite part of the whole thing. Now, you can all hear how good this sounds, so I'm just going to keep this section short and sweet and leave it at that, because there's not much more that needs to be said about how good it is. Alright, so now that we're reaching the end of the video, I think it's finally time to address the elephant in the room. This game's buggy and unoptimized launch. To put it bluntly, this game runs like shit. With high settings and no ray tracing on an RTX 2080 and Ryzen 7 1800X, I was getting anywhere from 40 to 90 FPS when walking and talking, 40 to 70 when shooting, and around 20 to 70 when driving. The worst part is just how wildly inconsistent it is, as these results can drastically change depending on the area. The outskirts of town were predictably more stable, and I could even get around 70 to 80 FPS with ray tracing on, but then you head back into the city and it drops to like 30. And if that wasn't bad enough, the game is filled to the brim with bugs, and it's honestly one of the buggiest games I have ever played. Now, if you're one of those paste eaters who are about to tell me, I played on my Xbox One and I had no issues whatsoever, then good for you, but I did. And I don't think I could go 5 minutes without seeing a bug. So here's a brief little montage of only the things that I personally found.
Can't deny it, it's all true. But everybody still wants to live here. This city's always got a promise for you. Might be a lie, an illusion, but it's there, just around the corner, and it keeps you going.
The cops don't fucking care!
It's a city of dreams, and I'm a big dreamer.
Give me a kiss. Mwah. Give me a kiss. Mwah. Why am I spinning? And it keeps you going.
Now, I will say that thankfully most of these things were just really dumb and made me laugh, but there definitely were a few issues that forced me to reload a save or even restart the game. Now, these issues alone are pretty bad, but nowhere near enough to ruin the game for me, and if I've made one thing in this video clear, it's that the bugs are the least of my worries. Bugs can and will be fixed, a lot of the other stuff cannot. Alright, so overall, there are some good things in here, but I think this game is just lacking on most fronts, and it doesn't really know what it wants to be. It's part RPG, part linear narrative, part Rockstar open world, part Ubisoft game, part looter shooter, and part broken. And it doesn't do any of those things particularly well. Well, I guess except the broken part, it's pretty good at being broken. I think this lack of focus is an unfortunate byproduct of CD Projekt Red's overambition, mismanagement, and possibly just lack of proper direction. I say that last part because I have a hunch that in the coming months, we're gonna hear some behind-the-scenes stories about how they shifted ideas mid-development. I would like to also hazard a bit of a guess and say that I think there was a big shift around 2018 or so, because if we look back to their initial trailer, Johnny Silverhand was mentioned on the radio as having died in 2076, 1 year before the game takes place. And he was also listed as an option for childhood hero on the initial character creator screen. But in the finished version of the game, Johnny died 50 years ago, a detail which makes the childhood section impossible and also drastically changes how the world would react to his memory. Because of this, it makes me think that as of 2018, Johnny Silverhand was not supposed to be in the game anywhere near as much as he is now. So my guess is that they shifted ideas around then and had to rework part of the story, which would help explain why it feels so haphazardly constructed. And the game's overall lack of identity is made even more annoying when you look back at all the trailers and marketing material and see how many things they either lied about or cut from the game. I linked a list below if you want to take a look at just how many missing features there are. Now, of course this is a massive game, and my guess is as good as yours as to why it came out half-baked, and I mean, we may never fully know why. Regardless of that, however, I still think the game should have been smaller. If this game was smaller, it would make it much easier for them to tighten up the experience. They could scrap a lot of the repetitive missions, add more detail and interaction to the world and AI, and create a much more interesting RPG. It's a damn shame how this game turned out, because I was really looking forward to it. It is worth noting though that your mileage will probably vary depending on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a game to just shoot a few things and gaze at a beautiful city, then this is definitely a solid option. But if you're searching for a deep RPG, a thought-provoking story, or an engaging open world, search elsewhere. Side note, if you're looking for a better Cyberpunk game, I would definitely recommend checking out Observer. It's a much smaller, linear game, but I think it's pretty good. It's definitely got a better celebrity voice actor, and I just think it's a really solid experience. When it comes to a final score, I think it would be a bit unfair to not at least mention the launch date, because it's pretty unacceptable. But since those issues will likely get patched up, I'm going to ignore them for this and just rate the game for what I think it is on the inside. And I think that's about a
6 out of 10.
Once they fix some of the technical issues, I'd say if you're interested in it, it's probably still worth checking out, even just to gaze at the city for a bit. But in my opinion, the core game is still gonna feel a bit hollow. Alright guys, thanks for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, I want to sincerely thank you for hearing me out, as I know a lot of people will probably have already tuned out and left a dislike 3 minutes in. But what did y'all think? Were you still satisfied with it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Feel free to let me know in the comments below. I know this is the second super hyped game in 2020 that I've now made a relatively negative video on, but I promise I don't go into these games looking to dislike them. I also want to take this time to thank you guys for 1,000 subscribers. I've been doing this for several years, and it's great to finally reach that milestone. Stay tuned for more reviews, and stay tuned for my own game, The Poison Roots, coming Q1 2021. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.